Texas Functional Health Centers. Everybody calls me Dr. B. Today we're going to talk a little bit about whiplash, right? We've all heard about whiplash. It comes from injury or accident. It doesn't have to be a car accident. It could be a roller coaster, a slip and fall, a fight, sports injury, but our head goes backwards and forwards pretty quickly and or side to side. In that moment, let's establish where we're at, right? So we're thinking of whiplash. It's going to happen to the neck or the top of the spine through here, right? Or the first 7 cervical vertebrae. You got to remember there's a really heavy thing on top of this that's encasing our brain, right? So our whole head up here. In most cases, it's somewhere between 8 and 15 pounds, right? So we got this big heavy weight on the end of a very fragile stick. Typically, we have muscles that are supporting our spine against gravity. These are postural muscles. So teeny tiny little subconscious muscles that keep all of this in the position that it should be. Now, being that they're subconscious and they're always holding our neck, whenever we have a sudden movement, right? So our head goes backwards and forwards really quickly in a car accident, we're going to tear some of those muscles, right? And if you've ever torn a muscle, so pulled a hamstring or sprained your groin or something like that, you can still function to some degree, but you're not going to use or utilize that muscle. And so your body does the same thing. When you damage one of those postural muscles, it's going to change the orientation of the function so that we can alleviate the pressure on those muscles, right? So the neck, right? We talked about this before. Most of the postural muscles are in the front, right? So they're holding it spring-like like this behind our throat. Now, to give those guys a break, what it's going to do is push everything forward, right? So it's going to drive everything forward so that we can recruit all the muscles in our traps and levators, right? So we're going to pivot everything forward like that. And that is what's going to cause us to misuse or abuse what are structural muscles, right? So like our traps and levators are really strong muscles that we should use temporarily to move something for a moment. They're not designed to hold our head up, right? And we'll start to see that falling forward more and more. The scar tissue from the initial injury is going to limit the range of motion of those joints, right? So we have a misuse of the muscles surrounding it, a misplacement, and the scar tissue from the particular injury or accident. Now, given enough time, right? So between 6 months and 5 years, we're going to start to see changes in the shape of the soft tissue, right? So the ligaments or connective tissue, the muscles, and the joints, right? So we sometimes will see degeneration back here in the facet joints or the joint degeneration, or we're going to start to see degeneration in the disc, right? The discs stay hydrated through normal range of motion or movement, right? We talked about that before, the imbibition. That imbibition is integral to keeping the disc hydrated. Any amount of time that we don't have that range of motion or movement, we're going to start to see those discs shrink. As they shrink, we think all these joints are going to get closer together, right? They're going to start to touch. Just like anything else, right? You rub two things together, you're going to start to develop a callus, and that's where we start to see big bone spurs, right? So these two joints touching or moving against each other, we're going to see big bone spurs to try and lock down that joint so it doesn't get any worse, right? It's a poor solution, poor long-term solution for a problem, but it's a great short-term solution, right? And that's what our body's full of. The human body's really good at fixing something so we can get to the next problem, right? If we sat around for 6 weeks not being able to use our neck, we would starve to death, right? Or something like that. So our body's really making it so we can get to the next movement, right? Next meal. That's all it's concerned about. It doesn't think about you being 50 or 60 years old. It thinks about the next meal. So that's why our body does all these crazy things in order to make it where our neck can work after a soft tissue.